Gosh, I love that song. Hello, everybody. This is Rolo, the Puerto Rican pistolero, coming to you live from the humble Puerto Rican Pistolero Studios here in Puerto Rico. It's great to see everybody here. We've gone through another spectacular week in the world. And I think one of the things that's been almost overwhelming in the Trump era, as we'll call it, is that every single day, whether it's a weekday or a weekend, there is something going on. And it almost makes it extremely difficult to decide what you're going to talk about. You can have a show every day. A lot of people do. And when you get to the end of the week, you're just everything that started on Monday has already moved at breakneck pace by the time that Friday rolls around. And there's always some sort of insane thing that's going on, whether it's, some update in one of the conflicts that's going on in the world, a plane rolling over on its wing in Canada, or the latest sort of scandal that's coming out of Washington D.C. and another made-up narrative on President Trump. It just never seems to end. So it's actually been uh, the the spoils of too much to talk about sometimes, and then I end up talking about these topics all day on my own that it's sometimes it's tough. So I've tried to narrow it down today. We'll see how everything goes on the show. Going to talk about Kash Patel and his confirmation. Check that out. We're going to talk a little bit about the elections in Germany. I'm not very familiar with the parties there, so I'm going to talk more about the geopolitical implications, depending on which way that works out, and some little known things that people may not know about. What's going on there in the bigger picture. Kind of an elaboration on what we discussed last week with JD Vance's speech to the EU in Munich and to NATO. We will discuss Joy Reid finally got the boot at MSNBC, which is fantastic. I'm sure that she'll try to make some sort of comeback online like all these losers do, only to see that when it comes to going into the private media space, nobody is going to tolerate her BS. So she will fail even worse than she did at MSNBC, and it's a glorious thing to see. We're going to discuss what's been going on in more of what's going on with geopolitically. The Chinese have been up to some shenanigans, and we'll talk about kind of how geopolitically right now things are extremely volatile. I think President Trump is the right man for the job, but there is going to be a lot of back behind the scenes dealing, I should say. And I think many countries, including some of our supposed allies, are really waiting for Trump to stumble at some point, and they're going to be ready to pounce on that opportunity. So the Chinese are definitely one of those that I would be concerned about. They've been waiting in the wings for a long time. We know that they've had their eyes on Taiwan since their inception, well, since the CCP's inception. So it will be interesting to see what they do and how the US's pivot from Europe to the Pacific is going to factor in all of that. We've got updates on what's been going on in Israel with the hostages being released and Hamas pulling their typical, let's be honest, it's bullshit. Uh, as far as I'm concerned. And we'll discuss a little bit about what is going on with Pope Francis. And it looks like he's, in critical health at the moment. And we're not sure how that's going to turn out. But I've been, maybe not on this show, but I've definitely been critical of this Pope. I was raised Catholic. I'm born again Christian at this point, but still follow what's going on because Catholicism is the biggest Christian denomination in the entire world. But the church has had massive problems for a long time, and I think that Pope Francis is the latest in that long line of issues. But that's pretty much what I've got going on here. If you didn't check it out, check out last week's episode of Rolo's Rants. It was kind of a surprise comeback. I've got a few shorts coming off of that. I'm going to start splitting the episodes into shorts. And depending on how things go, and if we can kind of meet some goals, we'll see if we can start doing a show during the midweek if you guys are enjoying the streams, and we can go from there. And it'll probably be on Wednesdays. I'd like to add another gaming stream at some point as well. I haven't decided when that's going to happen or how we're going to do it. My schedules here have been surprisingly busy in dealing with the cats and dealing with a lot of construction here in the apartment, updating some things as this place has gotten older. But so it's made every day pretty much a tight schedule. I get up at 6 o'clock and then pretty much go from there and feed the cats, start work all day, finish up, deal with the cats again, and deal with things around here at home. And then pretty much late at night is the time that I've got to relax. So it's been a little bit tough kind of setting these up. But if we can make some goals here, then maybe we'll start doing a midweek stream. So let's throw that up there and we'll start the show. So, Kash Patel, as you all know, Kash Patel, I'm a huge fan of his. He has been, ever since I've seen him on Timcast, really is the first time that I was introduced to him and really got to see what he was all about. He's the last of the really major cabinet members and probably the most controversial as far as the mainstream media and the mainstream political space was concerned. He finally got confirmed last week and has already started on the job. He and Pam Bondi are busy getting to work with everything that we've wanted to see. It looks like the Epstein client list is finally on the table. Literally, Pam Bondi announced it on Fox News last week on Friday, I believe. And I think that that is really what we've been seeing a lot of the pushback with his candidacy or with his appointment to the head of the FBI over the last few weeks. There's a fear permeating through Washington, D.C. You can feel it, it's absolutely palpable with what is going to be exposed on the Epstein client list, who's going to be on it, what we're going to find out, and if the Trump administration is going to pursue criminal prosecutions as far as that's concerned, and really reveal not only who in Congress, who in the media, who in the pop culture space was involved with Jeffrey Epstein, but even possibly if he was an agent of the intelligence agencies, whether that's our own CIA or a foreign intelligence agency, like the Mossad or somebody else. That is really what we're waiting to find out, and we'll see how much of it actually gets revealed and how the media is going to try to spin things, because I guarantee that they're going to try to undermine everything that we find out on that list and try to downplay it and most likely deflect and kind of block off, say that this is a lie, that it's going to be a list of Trump's enemies and it's all fabricated, just like they've talked about certain things that Doge has revealed are not kosher. But so far, everything has been moving at such a high pace with the Trump administration since the start on January 20th that the left and really the mainstream media and governments throughout the world have not been able to react properly to what's going on. And that's definitely part of the strategy. I think that for years, I always wanted the entire federal government to be audited. I know that I'd said I don't know if I've said it on this show, but if I were ever president of the United States, even if I got nothing else accomplished, I would freeze everything as is and just audit every department in the federal government. Doge is doing that, and it's no secret or surprise that that's why they're going absolutely ballistic at every turn. They're trying to use lawfare to stop this president and his cabinet from accomplishing the goals of the American people. And we've only scratched the surface with how much of our taxpayer dollars have been stolen. I know that a lot of my opinions, especially last week, were probably a little bit controversial. And in geopolitics, uh, are downright heinous, according to some of our allies. But I really do feel that, honestly, since the end of World War II and the United States asserting, kind of becoming the world's hegemon and taking advantage of that uh, to benefit the powers that be, whether that's the military industrial complex or politicians, the American people have really been secondary. All the blood, sweat, and tears, the treasure, the taxpayer dollars, the sacrifices that American families have made on both the battlefield and here at home have really been to try to cover and enrich those that are in power and their cronies. And it's something that's been horrible. It's something that's been hidden for a long time. And I think now is when we're all seeing it unfold. And those who are called conspiracy theorists before are now, the actual fact checkers in today's society. And it really is it's heartening to see, but this is going to be a constant battle. And it really is a battle between the forces of good and evil. And I mean that in a literal sense and a spiritual sense, in my opinion. I do think that President Trump lost in 2020 for a reason. I know that most of us probably know what happened in that election, but I think things worked out for the better because Trump's 2016 cabinet pales in comparison to the cabinet that he has today, and his strategy is completely different. I think in a lot of ways in 2016, he wasn't sure that he was actually going to win, and he wasn't prepared for the consequences of that. I believe that he still was under the impression that since he was so wildly popular from a celebrity perspective, when it came to politicians and really the social space and the elites alike, that he was going to basically be able to carry, through that first administration on personability and his experience and friendships with a lot of these people alone. And he got a rude awakening when the Russian collusion hoax came out. He made a mistake not going after Hillary, in my opinion. And from that moment forward, with the impeachments and everything that followed, obviously what happened with COVID, and now we know that COVID was, in essence, a biological weapon. Uh, it really, meant to cripple the United States and the West, and we're going to find even more about that as time goes on from RFK. But that's pretty much what many people believed, and now we're going to be able to have proof of that. It was very difficult for Trump to overcome all of that and the constant media bombardment. So now he's come back with a vengeance, and we're already seeing the pieces fall into place when it comes to that. But there's going to be a level of desperation which we've never seen before that's going to start, really coming out every single day, and we're really seeing it. But I think that so many people have been awakened to what is going on that the media has lost its credibility. Other world governments and their leaders have lost their credibility. And, people throughout the entire world, the common man and woman, are tired of being pawns in the globalist game and being manipulated and having their livelihoods destroyed, having their country stolen from them from constant illegal immigration and the spread of Islam throughout the world. Josie 1818, thank you for the gifted sub to Blue Shell. Congratulations, Blue Shell. I appreciate that. That we're going to start seeing a difference, but to unravel the entire deep state apparatus and the big money that's behind that and the geopolitical games of the intelligence agencies, it's going to be extremely difficult, and it's going to require a massive dismantling of the entire system. And there's going to be a lot of sabotage involved. Another gifted sub. Thank you. There you go to Cody Warner. Joe C is just dropping it. He's starting to make it rain. I can feel the drizzles. You can already see it. Break out the umbrellas, ladies and gentlemen. It could just be getting started. If we get the 10 super chats of $5 or more, the gifted subs will count too. So we can get 8 more. Then, we'll do a midweek stream as well. Because there's just so much news going on that I don't think that 1 2 hour stream a week is going to work. Maybe two 1 hour and a half streams will probably be the way that I started out. And we'll have the shorts in between. And it'll probably be at this time, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. or the 7 p.m. start there. So thank you for the gifted subs. Uh, and congratulations to Blue Shell and Cody Warner for getting those. So I think there's so much more going on right now than we can even imagine on so many different levels. And having somebody like Kash Patel be the head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation is hopefully going to start unraveling a lot of that. And I think it's pretty rich that we're seeing the media try to give us try to make us have sympathy for the plight of the government bureaucrat that is now fighting to justify their own existence. I know plenty of people that worked in the government or in the military and things like that. And a lot of them have done a great job. They work with integrity, but they've told me stories about the lack of integrity that is pervasive throughout the federal government. And like I said last week, a fish stinks from the head down. And that's really something that we're seeing. So it's going to require a complete purging and dismantling a lot of the apparatus that we have and a consolidation of a lot of different departments. But it's going to be if it's going to be interesting what's going to be revealed in the next few weeks. And I think we're going to be in shock. I know that there was a great video that I watched a few days ago. I wish I'd pulled it out, but it just came to my head of this gentleman who he's from the boomer generation, and he couldn't believe just how corrupt and broken the entire system was. And I think it's interesting that so many people who are older than us, I'm in my late 30s, I've known this for years. And I think for me, I started waking up when um really after the war on terror, having a lot of my friends who are a little bit older than me join the military at the time and go overseas and kind of reveal that, hey, we're not really fighting terrorism overseas. It seems like there's a lot of contractors and companies that are just taking advantage of this situation, and there's a lot of corruption involved, and the man and woman on the ground uh, really are just being left behind, and the rules of engagement are ridiculous. We're seeing these contractors make a ton of money, and we saw how we focused our resources on the Middle East at the expense of the Pacific Ocean and allowing China to rise in the background and advance their technology and spread their authoritarianism throughout the world. We saw how social media went from being a tool when I first started going to college to reconnect with your friends that you from childhood and in high school to then shifting over to being a tool for targeted advertisement and then really being a social engineering experiment to manipulate the hearts and minds of people throughout the entire world and to shift narratives and to really gather more information about each and every one of us than any intelligence agency could have ever imagined. And that's where we are today. And seeing how the millennial generation kind of went from a post politically correct generation to being the purveyors of wokeness throughout society and have become one of the weakest generations that we've seen, at least when you go to the divide between the older and younger millennials, and how gender ideology and that entire madness and political correctness has just completely destroyed and weakened the entire West, and how people have been convinced that they were racist or sexist for pointing out certain truths that we've known through all of human history, and how we've seen how we've pushed back against movements and social advances that we've made that were good, all for what? For nothing, to cover up the sins of those in power. And I'm really convinced that that's what a lot of this was. Either we were trying to cover for, the pharmaceutical industrial complex and how they poisoned us, and really the food industry really has poisoned us. It's kind of like how they said, leaded gasoline wasn't bad back in the day, or asbestos wasn't bad. I think that a lot of what we're finding out now, why a lot of people are so confused, why a lot of people are depressed in society, is not just the brainwashing that's occurred, it's the chemicals that are found in everyday products, in our food supply, and in some of the medications that they've been pushing. Not all those things are bad. Obviously, we've made advancements throughout the years that have saved our entire society and allowed more people to live than ever. But I think that there's consequences to some of these things. And just like how social media started off as something good, once somebody in power can figure out a way to manipulate things for their own advantage, we'll see that. And I think, kind of circling back to the Epstein client list, I'm personally convinced that a lot of what we're seeing here is the reason why a lot of the transgenderism and, especially when it comes to children, has been pushed, is because we have a large child trafficking network that has been going on for decades. And the elites in our society want to try to normalize deviant behavior that is being influenced not only from their own blasé attitude, but pure evil, in the spirit, to cover up for what they're doing. So they want to normalize deviancy. They want to normalize perversion. They want to normalize children, being able to change their sex, or to change the age of consent or voting and all these things like that, to try to make it so that, when their sins are finally revealed to everybody, society will be so far gone that nobody's going to care, because everybody's going to be like, well, everybody's already into that, right? And, President Trump winning, and really the American people pushing back, because this was a win of the American people and freedom minded people and normal people that understand that a man is a man and a woman is a woman. And, women fighting for their rights in sports, finally stood up and said, enough is enough. We're not going to accept this. We know that these people are evil and what they're pushing is evil. And we're going to make sure that everything is revealed. And so I think that, you know, it's all been by design, right? Because as the government tries to become more and more authoritarian, and I won't try to get too religious about this, but it's obvious that I think, there's other dark forces involved that are influencing all this. There's always a constant battle between good and evil that we don't see, that influences a lot of this. But human depravity has always been around, right? We do live in a fallen world. I think a lot of times, especially when we're religious, um, we give the devil his due more than he deserves it. And I'm sure that a lot of times the devil is sitting back and he's like, look, I don't have to do anything. You guys will destroy yourselves, just because you want to, because of greed and depravity that humans have. And that's just been proven throughout history. And I think in a time where we have such an abundance of resources, when we really think about it, and everything has advanced so far, it's been very easy for the powers that be to really make it easier for us to stop caring about our values, right? And they understood, the one thing that the authoritarians and the communists always understood is that you needed to decimate, well, not just decimate, annihilate the family unit and religion and a moral code. Because if you have any sort of higher power than the government, then you'll always be willing to stand and fight against, the forces of oppression throughout this world. If you answer to God, then the government is the lowercase g, and it will never supersede that. And obviously, the family is the most powerful unit of all of that. And a man and a woman, a mother and a father, having children and standing together as a family unit, to oppose these things, to teach their children proper morality and how to be adults in this world, how to be self sufficient. That's the last thing in the world that these people want. They want you completely reliant on the system. And in the past, we lived in societies that were feudal with emperors and kings, and everything was authoritarian. Authoritarian. There was always the elite aristocratic class, the 1%, and then everybody else was basically a peasant. And as society has advanced, we've seen more and more of the individual being empowered, and that's what the founders of the United States really wanted to pursue. But as the tactics have evolved of those who want more and more power, they've taken advantage of that desire for individualism and really pushed, the opposite side of it, which is individualism can fall victim to its own greed and desire for power. And I think this has been a problem of the conservative movement, especially as people have lost their faith or their moral code, so to speak. If you're not a religious person, you can still be a good moral character. Uh, we've really forgot that sense of honor, responsibility, and dignity, and we've really tried to pursue our own wealth to such an extreme that we forget to look out for our own communities. And they've made community, kind of on the right for a long time. Community and communal things became bad because we associated that with leftism and communism and socialism, and almost to our own detriment, where it was like herding cats to get conservatives to come together. This has always been a huge problem on the libertarian side of things, and the anarchist side of things. And so you always have to draw this balance of, I don't want the government to dictate how I live my life and what I do, but as an individual, we do need to promote community, help one another out, and really help empower one another and help your fellow man, or else you're going to fall into silos where they can just pick us off one by one, because you're just like, well, I've been successful in my life, I've been responsible, I'm going to hoard all my cash over here and raise my money, and I really don't care what my neighbor does, or what they're thinking. I'm not going to become a part of government because I'm against government. So I'm not going to go to school board meetings. I'm not going to run for mayor. I'm not going to pay attention to my local politics. And meanwhile, the authoritarians and the people that believe in actual collectivism have taken that power away from us. So the only way to defeat the system is to become, in some ways, a part of that system and work, from within. And I think that that's a lesson that we've started to learn, and it's something that we pretty much have to live with. We're not going to get an anarchic society like some of the anarcho capitalists want. And honestly, with the way that there's a lack of morality in this world, I don't think that's something that we want, because we're going to trade government overlords for corporatist overlords, and there needs to really be a balance, and the individual needs to have rights. And we have to have that shared code and that shared culture. And I think that that's one of the things that you know the uh the left has done a good job of demonizing, you know because we dealt with, fascistic and nationalistic movements in the past that were, racially bigoted, like, Germany during World War II, or even the Japanese in that same period. It's made having a pride of country a dirty word. But we really do need to have a shared system of values and a code of honor for a society such as ours to survive. And hello, everybody. Patriot from Warsaw, JM the Elite Fan, Bernabe Sanchez, Axilla, Wayfarer, uh, Gumplarazzi. Thank you all for being here. And Cody and Blue Shell, I know you guys are lurking in the chat as well. Welcome to Rolo's Rants. So it's extremely important to have this. And this goes beyond race. We can have a shared moral code and a set of standards in our Constitution. Those are beliefs and truths that we hold self evident despite your race. But, it's interesting to see how for years they use the bludgeon of racism and bigotry or they've weaponized those things to make people feel guilty, to tell people that being on time or wanting to be successful and caring about individual rights is whiteness. as if those aren't universal truths that whether you're white, you know, white, brown, black, Asian, or, some sort of, creature from the Black Lagoon, we would all agree that those are good things. So really do have to participate in all of this and pay attention to what's going on. We become way too comfortable in our own individual success and really in a society that we're not really left for wanting a lot of things. As you know, it's easy to compare ourselves to the past, but let's be honest, a lot of things were a lot worse in the past. I think really what's changed is that we become so materialistic that sometimes society and life feels empty because everything is so easy when there used to be conflict. I'm not talking about conflict in the sense of violence. It's that we used to have to overcome more adversity than we do today. There are people who are suffering right now. There's no doubt, whether it's with the fentanyl crisis, the mental health crisis, the actual health crisis, the crime that's been rising in this country. There are a lot of people suffering in the United States and throughout the world. But as far as the advancements of society, really going hungry or not having, we've got access to technology and entertainment that we've never had before. We can order food and have it arrive in minutes. We can order products and have them arrive the same day. Everything is so easy nowadays that it really has left this emptiness in society. I think a lot of people started really noticing that during the COVID lockdowns when a lot of folks were like, well, this is pretty awesome. I get to stay at home all day and I don't have to do anything. But after a while, people started getting cabin fever. They realized that they don't want what the globalists and the World Economic Forum want, where, you'll live in the pod and eat the bugs. Now, I think that they're trying to manipulate our society to become that way. But as human beings, that's just not what we want. There are some people that can live that way, of course. And we've seen some societies try to push that. In China, really, especially, that we've started to see that. But at the same time, even the Chinese know that people need to go out and work and do things in order for a society to function. So there's only so much you can do. But are they trying to eliminate some of the population? Is that what was going on? Are they trying to turn us against each other? I think that sometimes that's what we're starting to see here. And I think, this is why people in the West, we believe in too much of individualism, especially in the United States. Europe has kind of fallen to the wayside in a lot of ways as they've gotten rid of, they were recovering from the world wars and the trauma that nationalism brought them when it went too far in one extreme. And they lost kind of their gusto and their identity. These were the people that built empires and created the West and advanced society over the last 1,000 years. And now they've ceded everything that they built. And I understand that a lot of what was built in the West was built on violence and conquering, but that's just been the way that humanity has been since time immemorial. Good, bad, or indifferent, that's the way it's always been. There's always been a conflict from the start. So it doesn't mean that you want to repeat those same mistakes or oppress other people and take their stuff like you did in the past, but to forget the good things that the West created, the technological advances and the societal advances and the rights that people gained that were finally recognized as from our, given to us by our creator, nature's God, and not just for us existing, and not because a government decree said that we have those rights. It was really a revolutionary concept. And I think that that's something that they want us to forget. And, we're not going to let them do that. They're going to fight at every step of the way in order to try to make that the case. But, they're going to fail. They really are going to fail. And I think there is no going back in the short term right now. If Trump 2.0 ends up being a failed experiment, so to speak, then they will try to reverse everything. But I think for one or two generations at least, the cat's out of the bag. And until, people like myself and the Gen Zers that really have bought into this in the freedom movement, and all of you out there kind of die off, they're not going to be able to win this, and we're not going to let them take our kids. So this is going to be a generational battle now, in the same sense that it took them almost 100 years to start reversing all the advancements that we've made. It's going to take them 100 years to take it back. But if we become complacent, then they'll be able to do it. And unfortunately, well, I'll take that a little bit back. They may have a better chance of doing it because, as awesome as AI has been, AI is also going to be a weapon that will could ultimately lead to our downfall. I think that with AI generated video, especially, you're not going to be able to trust anything that you see very soon. Right now, everybody's got a decent eye for seeing if something's AI generated. But I think we're almost going to have to go through a regression in our society once we have a major scare where we have something that is going to be completely fabricated, but also totally indistinguishable from reality, is going to cause some chaos, whether it's a false flag attack, maybe it'll be the alien invasion that we've been waiting for. Um, Maybe it'll be something else, some large scale terrorist attack. I think that they are going to try to use that as a move to, try to push us in the direction that they want. And either they'll be successful in all of this, or it will cause society to almost move backwards, where we're going to start going back to physical media. We're not going to believe anything that we see, and news is going to be much more regionalized. So if you don't see it locally, if somebody doesn't come up to you and tell you about it, and you don't have eyewitness reports from somebody physically talking to you, uh, you're just not going to believe it if it's on the internet. And that's going to be a huge issue, but it is going to be the consequence of that type of technological movement. And it could also destroy society, because I don't see how a media and a government will function if nobody believes what they're seeing. And it may cause a mass regression. I don't know if we will ever get to the point where we're going to have some sort of Terminator moment, because I think before we get to the point where machines can completely devastate us, I think AI will cause a massive scare where society is not going to accept it. So it now it's going to be a balance. See, I think the reason why that's going to be is because AI, as we know it, is advancing faster than physical machinery, and you still need electricity. We're not in the Matrix type level. We don't have nuclear fusion yet or anything like that with unlimited resources. So I think we're a little bit further away from that, and I think we'll probably see some sort of terrible event of maybe some robotic drone or tank that's controlled by AI will kill a bunch of people, or cause a massive scare, and then everybody's gonna be like, no, we're not doing this, son. The problem is that we already are dealing with nations and corporations that don't have any sense of morality, in China and some of these big tech corporations, where they really can't help themselves. I don't know if somebody saw that clone android that they were building, where it's got muscle fibers and things like that. I really think that, you know, it's just since the dawn of time that humanity has a lot of arrogance, that we think that we know better. And it's interesting that we can learn the lessons through our fiction of what is going to happen and what is probable. And we just really want to F around and find out. We really can't help ourselves when it comes to this stuff. So, but you know, I think somebody in the chat, Snowpiercer was a great movie too, by the way, with that train. With the two-tier society. They did make it into a TV show. I don't know how good the TV show was, but you can check that out as well. Uh, and I just don't see how we're gonna get there now. We're gonna go like Westworld style and life model decoys, where world leaders are gonna be replaced by robots and AI. It's possible. Are we gonna get into Deus Ex, where you find out that the news anchors are really a super powerful AI? that doesn't actually exist. I mean, we may get to that point. I think something like that with AI generated videos is much more likely, but we'll see. Anyway, that was that was kind of a 45-minute opening rant like I usually do, where I weave my way about things. Let's get to the actual news. I do want to play Kash Patel's speech after he was confirmed as the head of the FBI. I think it's great to see, and I think he's going to make an excellent FBI director. I'd like to see kind of the feds gutted a little bit, but I think Cash is going to do some good stuff. I think we really do need to see a somewhat of a consolidation of some of these departments that are redundant. Maybe eliminate a lot of them, get rid of a lot of the waste and spending, which we're starting to do with Doge. But hopefully we can see things go in the right direction. Maybe we can have something like the ATF eliminated and, all those pesky gun laws finally removed once and for all that we've been advocating for a long time. That would be fantastic and something that I personally would love. But, this is a good start and we're moving in the right direction here. So let's check out what Cash had to say when he was confirmed here the other day.
Wow. First and foremost, we were just with President Trump, and I just want to thank him. I know he's not here in the room right now, but what a ride we have been on, what a courageous warrior and leader he has been, and the faith and trust he has put in me to lead the FBI is the greatest honor that I'll ever have in my life. And to General Bondi, that sounds pretty freaking cool. Pam, you're my sister, you're my mentor, you're my friend, you're my boss, and the confidence you have placed in me, I will never violate that trust. The men and women of the FBI will be led under your leadership through one standard, the Constitution. So thank you for entrusting me, Pam. Oh man, this is effing crazy. So obviously you don't get here alone. I'm here because of God. I'm here because of my family, and I'm here because of my friends. And you're literally in this room because you made it happen. My sister Nisha and my nephew Aryan flew in from London just to be here. My beautiful girlfriend Alexis is here. Yes, I agree. My aunts and uncles are here. They've come from all over the country. I am living the American dream. And anyone that thinks the American dream is dead, just look right here. You're talking to a first-generation Indian kid who's about to lead the law enforcement community, the greatest nation on God's green earth. That can't happen anywhere else. To the senators and the men and women of the United States House of Representatives,
Greg
you
the
placed an
Goblin with the
enormous
20.
trust in me, an enormous
Thank
leap
you,
of faith.
Greg.
One that I didn't know that I could possibly earn back, but I'm going to spend every single day on this job doing so. The fact that you placed the confidence you did in me has inspired me to reach new heights at this job. I promise you the following. There will be accountability within the FBI and outside of the FBI, and we will do it through rigorous constitutional oversight starting this weekend. Yeah. This is great. We all used to live in the same freaking house. Yeah, I don't have any prepared remarks. I wish I could go around the room and, tell the story about how each and every one of you have magically touched my life to put me in this position. What a roller coaster ride it has been. I do know this. We are in this room together because you guys have a love of country that is truly inspirational, and it bleeds out everywhere we go. And if you look around this room, you see civil servants, you see warriors, you see attorneys, you see great husbands and fathers and mothers and wives. And we're fighting for the same thing, our future, our children, this guy. And there is no greater mission. I wish I had more words to thank every single one of you, but every time I look at every single one of you, you guys know the stories you can't tell. More importantly, the ones you can. this is Pam and I were just talking in the back, and we were like, do you believe this? Like, we were on the campaign trail together. We were attorneys in the first administration together. Now we're here. She's the Attorney General. I'm the Director of the FBI. Like, this is insane. And I don't really fully believe it yet. I hope to. But
Believe it.
I'm just not here without you guys. And look, I know the media's in here. And if you have a target, that target's right here. It's not the men and women at the FBI. You've written everything you possibly can about me that's fake, malicious, slanderous, and defamatory. Keep it coming. Bring it on. But leave the men and women of the FBI out of it. They deserve better. And for those of you who think that there's going to be a two-tier system of justice, not with Attorney General Bondi. There's a singular system of justice for all Americans, and there will be accountability. And the reason that this mission is so important is simply the following. 100,000 people last year raped. 100,000 people died of CCP fentanyl overdose and heroin. 17,000 homicides. Violent crime is out of control. We cannot have a United States of America where that is acceptable, where someone dies every 30 minutes, where someone ODs every 7, where someone's raped every 6. That cannot be allowed to continue, and it will not be allowed to continue. Our national security mission is equally as important. Anyone that wishes to do harm to our way of life and our citizens here or abroad will face the full wrath of the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And if you seek to hide in any corner of this country or any corner of this planet, we will put on the world's largest manhunt, and we will find you, and we will decide your end state, not you. We will uphold the Constitution. We will uphold ourselves to the Constitution. The men and women at the FBI, I have your back because you have the backs of the American people. You will be held to the same high standard. Any deviation from that standard will not be tolerated at this Federal Bureau of Investigation. The men and women at the FBI who make us safe deserve better, and they are going to get it with our leadership and your support. God bless America, and God bless every one of you. I love this country.
Well done. Well done. Kash Patel, your new head of the FBI, ladies and gentlemen. I thought that was a great speech. I think I think that's good. I think that Cash, I know Jam the Elite fan, I know you're saying the banality of evil there. I think uh, obviously we know there's a lot of corruption within the FBI. I do think that most people, it's like the military, right? Uh, I think most rank and file members, and even the intelligence agencies, I would argue to an extent, are like this. That a lot of people join these agencies or organizations out of a sense of patriotism. There's obviously the people that go there for some sort of college uh, college and all the benefits as well. But a lot of people join because of a sense of patriotism and duty. For a long time, especially the media has made the FBI seem pretty cool. Everybody wants to be an FBI agent or wanted to be back in the day. A lot of that may be government propaganda, obviously, but people go in for that cool law enforcement factor. So I think that finding somebody that actually lets people do their actual jobs, which is actually root out crime and actual evildoers and not normal American people who are just opposing the government or that are saying things that may be controversial on the internet. I don't think most of them want to do that. They actually want to go after cartels, terrorists, and organized crime and things like that. So, and you still have to be very careful, right? Because Cash is going to need people from within to help him root out a lot of the corruption. So you can't throw everyone under the bus right away, unless you're just going to gut and get rid of the entire organization, which is not going to happen at least not overnight. So you can start dismantling a lot of that stuff, but I think as far as the apparatus works, a federal police force, so to speak, or an investigative force is going to exist in this country one way or the other. I don't think that you're going to be able to undo the FBI, just like a CIA is still going to exist. You know, you're always going to have a internal and external security, so to speak, for a nation, just like you're going to need a military and a diplomatic corps. I think those are kind of basic functions that almost every government is going to have, but there needs to be accountability, and there need to be, there needs to be a social responsibility when it comes to the power that's involved with that, because obviously the government has the power to incarcerate and kill you. So if they're not going to be held accountable for when they make mistakes or when they do actual evil and wrong, then it leads to authoritarianism. So hopefully Kash will do a lot of that, and hopefully a lot will be revealed as far as people in positions of power that have taken advantage of that, and even people in lower positions who are just plain old corrupt. The Peter Strokes and people like that that led to the Russian collusion, or even Colonel Venkman or Vindman, I should say. I'm thinking Peter Venkman from Ghostbusters. Um, that led to the Russian, the very fine phone call hoax with Trump and President Zelensky in his last administration. So we're going to need to root out those people. I mean, there was a member of, I believe, was it the Treasury? I'm not sure, that commented that he'd worked with Elon Musk and Doge, and when that happened, they pretty much booted him, and Elon took him back as a part of Doge. Now he's kind of snitching on the government itself, which I've got no problem, and we're going to need more and more people like that. Did the cat just walk in? I don't know if the cat just came back in or if she stayed out, but the queen, the queen of the house, I should say, at this point. So it's really the only way. You need to find out where the bodies are buried, and as complete outsiders, you're not always going to be able to do that. So you're going to need the good people that are there, bring them back up through the ranks, make sure that they've got integrity, and they will root out the wrongdoers with it. So that's just kind of the way that I look at it. That's just a pragmatic approach, in my opinion. So hopefully Cash does well. All right. So I think this article here from the Federalist kind of emphasizes that a little bit. And this is about Kash Patel. This was just before he was confirmed. So we'll skip down here. President Trump was elected in no small part as a rebuke to a national security apparatus and intelligence agencies that have been weaponized and politicized against dissenters from ruling class orthodoxy. From Russiagate and the fostering of the censorship industrial complex to the first Trump impeachment and the January 6th Inquisition to the targeting of all from faithful Christians to pro life activists and parents concerned about their kids being indoctrinated into Marxism in school. Increasingly, our deep state has operated like our political foes' secret police. As I recently reported at Real Clear Investigations, the evidence shows that at least at the FBI, whistleblowers exposing this misconduct have had their careers and lives destroyed. Those defending them have faced retaliation too. The turning of America's cops and spies on the American people is the death knell of the Republic, not to mention ultimately a boon to our adversaries. After all, from their perspective, what could be better than seeing the U.S. destroy itself from within by eviscerating liberty and justice in targeting domestic wrongthinkers? We effectively run information operations on ourselves via politicizing intelligence while diverting precious resources from pursuing our actual foreign enemies. Simply put, police states cannot be free states. Patel, like Gabbard, knows this well because he has extensive experience within the national security apparatus and has found himself in its crosshairs. That makes him, like Tulsi Gabbard, uniquely equipped to take it on. Patel's bona fides speak for themselves. He was a public defender, prosecutor, staff member at the Justice Department, and during the first Trump administration, senior director for counterterrorism at the National Security Council. principal deputy to the acting director of national intelligence, and chief of staff to the acting secretary of defense. But perhaps most importantly, Patel was the exposer par excellence of the Russia collusion hoax at its height while serving as a top investigator on the House Intelligence Committee. There, he helped lead the drafting of the Nunez memo that revealed the fraud perpetrated on the FISA court used to spy on the Trump campaign by the way of the advisor Carter Page. Efforts he would later continue by working to declassify and release Russiagate documents under then acting director of national intelligence Rick Grinnell. Little could better illustrate Patel's courage and ability to take on a weaponized and hyper politicized deep state. In the weeks before issuing the memo, former Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein reportedly threatened to subpoena Patel's communications as well as those of his colleagues. Unbeknownst to the investigator, the Justice Department was already collecting those communications records under subpoena per request covering data from as early as December 1st of 2016. The same DOJ whose misconduct Patel was investigating was spying on him, and on absurd grounds, as Inspector General Michael Horowitz would later reveal. And responding to a question from the Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley, Republican from Iowa, regarding this episode during his confirmation hearing, Patel said, "Senator, this may be one of the scenarios that most uniquely qualifies me to take command of the FBI. Having been the victim of government overreach and weaponized in a weaponized system of justice and law enforcement, I know what it feels like to have the full weight of the United States government barreling down on you. And as the Biden Inspector General, Horowitz determined those activities by the FBI and DOJ were wholly improper and not predicated upon law and facts. I will ensure, if confirmed, that no American is subjected to that kind of torment, to that kind of cost financially and personally." Gabbard likewise had stellar on paper credentials, having spent more than 2 decades in uniform, including deploying in Iraq and serving on the Homeland Security, Foreign Affairs, and Armed Services committees in Congress. And this goes on and on and on to talk about that. We'll finish. Perhaps the most important shared trait between Gabbard and Patel is that they're not captured by the entities they would lead. Rather, they have the scars illustrating how those entities have strayed from their missions and the smarts and tenacity to restore them. The Senate showed it knew what time it was when it recently confirmed Gabbard. And obviously now they have confirmed Kash Patel as well as the director of the FBI. So there you go. That's a little bit of the background in case you weren't sure who Kash Patel was. I know for a lot of people, if you hadn't been watching some of the conservative podcasting space over especially the last 3 years or so, you may not have known Kash. Like I said, I've seen him on Tim Pool and a lot of other shows over the years. Thank you for Begotten Man for stopping by. I appreciate you. Cerberus, what's up? And again, Greg, thank you for the $20 super chat. That is going to the kitten fund. Like I said, I'm visiting the kittens where they are right now. They've been on the farm where they're being rehabilitated and socialized until they get a little bit older and I can get them spayed and neutered. But they've been doing great. Lucy and Mr. Moo, as I call them, uh, are great, and it's been a lot of fun helping raise those cats. And not something that I expected to happen when I was here in Puerto Rico, and I didn't expect to stay as long as I've had, but I've enjoyed it a lot, and it's a different pace. Last week I did talk a little bit about Puerto Rico. I did make a couple of mistakes on the show. I believe I said that CENTCOM had been the one running the operations during Hurricane Maria. I meant Northern Command, which is in charge of the mainland United States. CENTCOM takes care of other regions of the world. And I believe that Puerto Ricans gained their citizenship as part of the Jones, let's see, one of the Jones Acts. I believe I said it was 1916. It may have been 1917. Let's see. Let's double check this. Mm-mm-mm. Let's see. Da-da-da. Oh, there you go, Greg. Thank you for more with the $20. Greg, if you have not seen the kittens, then I guess I should show them to you. I do have more photos of them. You know, any excuse, right, to show cute animals on the internet is fine by everyone. Obviously, we've got the girl that you guys have gotten to know and love, Ritsu. I've had her for 7 years. She's also a Puerto Rican cat. So you can see Ritsu right there in all her calico glory. I'm not sure how she will react to the other cats. She's been a little bit jealous uh, of them so far, but the kittens have been doing great. And I mean, I think they'd probably be friendly with her. So there's those two silly little things sleeping on the couch next to me. Lucy does like to watch me play Fortnite, by the way. She's wholly engrossed in watching all things gaming. So I appreciate that, Greg. Thank you so much for your generosity. You've always been a real one, and thank you so much again. So we're almost at the goals here. We wanted like 10 super chats of above $10. We got two from Greg, and we've got two memberships gifted. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Let's continue on. We'll go on an aside here, and we'll just celebrate a little bit. That isn't it great that as the Trump 2.0 era and the Make America Great Again era continues on. We're only these cats were strays too. That's where I saved them. They're out on a bridge here. They did have another brother who unfortunately got hit by a car before I could come and rescue all of them. Their mother had apparently gotten hit by a car and died a few days before that. So I'd been feeding them. She had actually discovered me and followed me home one day because I usually go on a like a 3.5 mile walk. And she followed me back one day, but kept looking back and was concerned. Dropped her back off there, and then a couple of days later, the kitten showed up, and then she showed up with all the kittens a couple days after that, and I realized that she was the mom. And then I wanted to take all of them, but I just didn't have the means to do that at the time. And unfortunately, with how things are around here, uh, before I could save the mom and the little ginger cat, they both were killed. And that was it was pretty devastating. It was a rough few days there, but I've got these two, and they're going to be okay. They've got a follow-up vet appointment next week to finish all their shots and do some more blood work. There's always parasites when you get stray cats or dogs, especially in Puerto Rico, because it's a jungle out here, literally. So they're almost done with that. They'll get their last vaccines, and then hopefully they'll be good in a month or two. Hopefully I can get them spayed and neutered, and then they'll be all set, and they won't add to the stray population here. But thank you again. Joy Reid, she's done. This is great. I mean, there's not really much to say here, is there? I mean, we've seen this. Another one bites the dust. As the mainstream media's ratings go in the tank, we see that these personalities are known liabilities to the movement, and they are being thrown to the wayside. So I think it is going to be awesome to see Joy Reid gone. She's a liar. She's a cynical human being. She's absolutely awful. And it is going to be fantastic to have a world where you can even just, not that I watch MSNBC, but not having to see her face pop up all the time and just lie and lie and lie constantly is going to be great. Now, it's unfortunate that she's already made her millions of dollars, and so have all these other people, the Rachel Maddows of the world. There's so many more that need to go, but it is fantastic to see how independent media has shaken things up. Truth is now on the table, and a lot of these media mouthpieces are going to go by the wayside. Now, as usually happens, I'm sure that she will try to come back in one form or another but it seems like all these left-wing talk show hosts are not nearly as successful when they go alone, vis-a-vis Don Lemon. So for every Megyn Kelly, you have a Don Lemon, or what? Who's that dumbass that used to be a sports commentator? He wears the glasses now. He's crazy and off the deep end. That they just fall into loser level, and you're like, I swear these guys are living off of welfare right now, or they just took slivers of their millions of dollars to just keep surviving until they're out of money one day. So Joy Reid, we won't miss you. You got what you deserved here. And now MSNBC, we'll see what they do. Have they learned their lesson, or are they going to continue to double and triple down on the BS and the left wing propaganda? I don't know. I really don't know. It would be nice if the world started realizing that this is the direction that we're going, and they can move on the side of truth, justice, and the American way, as they say. But I'm asking too much. Keith Olbermann, that's right, Keith Olbermann. See, he's that forgettable, but at the same time, he says such outrageous things, and obviously that's by design, right? He talks a lot of crap, so you're going to remember it because it is so absurd what comes out of his mouth that you're just like, wait, what? So he does make a name for himself, even if it's a bad name. What do they say? Uh, uh, any press is good press. So that's just how it is. Yeah. See, everybody knew who I was talking about. Oberman is just an absolute fool. So Joy Reid's gone. Now we just need all the other ones. Who's gone so far? Stelter. We need the View gone. We really need the View gone. I think they're the ones that have got to go. So, and that would be absolutely fantastic. Now, I don't know too much about German politics, so I will go a little bit into this, but not too deeply. But it looks like the CDU, which is a supposed it's a conservative party in Germany, has won. But as I believe people pointed out, I believe that this was uh, Angela Merkel's party. So AfD is what is it? Alternative for Deutschland, I believe. They're the more far right party, quote unquote, that has been you know gaining ground in Germany. They took the number 2 spot in their legislative elections there, but the CDU took the most seats, and it looks like their leader Friedrich Merz, forgive me if I mispronounce that, is going to be taken over. Now, again, I don't know too much about this. A lot of these, the polls ended a few hours ago, and I have not gotten a chance to check it out. But the way that these European parties typically work is that because there are so many parties in these countries, I believe that there's 6 major parties in Germany from what I saw in these polls right here. Let's bring this up. So it looks like the CDU took the top spot with 211 seats, and AfD took the second spot with 142. Typically, what you'll find here is because there are so many parties, not one party has the power to take a majority and to really push a mandate the way that a two-party system in the United States would. Excuse me. So you're going to get some coalition building. And if Friedrich Merz's background has anything to say about the direction that they're going to go, then to me, I don't know. I don't really see Germany changing. And it's a serious problem because Germany is the industrial center of the European Union, and really the country that dictates most of the policy that trickles down to the rest of the EU. And let's see more about this guy right here. I think Grok's got some information that I can look up. Okay. Aha. See, here we go. So it's the Christian Democratic Union is what the CDU stands for. We'll see how Christian they really are. I don't know if that's just a misnomer at this point. But here's the interesting about this, because I started looking up this guy. I was like, who's this Friedrich Merz? And is this good or bad for Germany? And I don't think it's a good thing, ladies and gentlemen, because according to this, Friedrich Merz is a politician, a German politician, leader of the CDU, has a notable history with BlackRock, the world's largest asset management firm. From 2016 to 2020, Merz served as the chairman of the supervisory board of BlackRock's German subsidiary. In this role, he was not just a figurehead, he actively worked to strengthen the company's ties with key clients, regulators, and political decision makers in Germany. This position involves significant lobbying efforts, leveraging his extensive political network from his earlier career in the German Bundestag and European Parliament. Huh. Mm-mm-mm. So it looks like the globalists have won again. And so, what is most likely going to happen here? Again, not that well versed in German politics, but the way that the coalition building works here, we know that the globalists are really the ones that have been pushing for authoritarianism and for illegal immigration in these countries. AFD is opposed to that, but AFD is also more of a populist workers' party. And a lot of what's really going on here is the narrative that you hear from a lot of people is that AFD is a far right anti-immigration party. Really, it's more about, like I said, it's more of a workers' party in Germany, and they're really more about the common everyday man. So it's populist, like the kind of like the MAGA movement, yeah, I would say. But this is really about oil and natural gas, and that's what this has always been about with Ukraine and what's going on in the war there, and with Russia, and it's it's really been about expanding. Now, I'm all for American energy going there, but the fact of the matter is that natural gas from Russia is a lot cheaper, and the Europeans continue to buy it. This is what this is all about. It's about the State Department in the U.S. and the British Foreign Office really have been pushing the EU to, cut off their ties with Russia. Some of those reasons are obvious. Putin's not a good dude, but at the same time, that has been to build a stranglehold on American energy, and namely through through our various subsidiaries and and the Shell Corporation in the UK. And there's a lot that's been going on there with the European politics, and that's really a big part of what's going on with the war in Ukraine. That's what the Burisma deal with Hunter Biden was all about, and ultimately, that's kind of the power play that's going on here. And so, I mean, it's a little bit complex, isn't it? Because on the one hand, we do want to export as much energy as we can throughout the world, and our allies probably should be buying our oil and natural gas rather than the Russians. But if you truly believe in capitalism and more independence, just like we believe in our own sovereignty, then people should be allowed to buy stuff wherever they want, and especially if it's cheaper. So this is a big factor of what's going on here, and I think part of why we've been able to push the war in Ukraine so much, and why NATO's been and the EU have been so desperate for it, is because of this desire to decouple and to really maintain a stranglehold on energy in Europe. And Ukraine is a huge part of that. The natural gas pipelines obviously went through Ukraine. Ukraine has, I believe, the second largest natural gas reserves in the European continent at this point. So Russia's motivation was probably partially preventing NATO expansionism, but it's also to prevent Ukraine from being able to exploit those natural gas deposits and sell them directly to Europe and cut off their pipelines from Russia. So there's a lot of different factors here, and so we should never get it twisted. I want the war in Ukraine to end. I think the Europeans need to pay their fair share. I don't think that we should be financing that war whatsoever. But the Russians do have their own motivations, and it's not just trying to get the Donetsk region and to keep their base in Sevastopol. It really is to try to maintain their energy monopoly or their energy stranglehold. It's not monopoly anymore on Europe, and Ukraine becoming a big supplier of that natural gas is a huge problem for them. So that's why they've taken over a lot of these regions. Again, that doesn't mean that we should be financing it. There's also a lot of corruption involved that we know with the Biden crime family. And I also suspect that as we learn more about the Epstein list and things like that, that that Ukraine has been a hub for a lot of the corruption of Western politicians over the last few decades. And those are all things that are most likely going to get revealed as we get closer and closer to ending the conflict there. And as Europe becomes more and more desperate to continue the conflict, I think, the grand strategy of all of this is the fact of the matter is that China is we really have two major adversaries in there's really two major adversaries that we have in the world right now. And I would say Islamic extremism is one. And it's not that Islam is the scapegoat or terrorism or scapegoats like after 9/11 that was perpetuated. That's a truth. That's more of a spiritual battle between an ideology and a religion that's incompatible with Western values and what we stand for in the West. So that's kind of a big picture geopolitical thing. And then China, obviously, is the other adversary. And I've always thought to myself, now the problem is the Russians are going to do what the Russians do, which is the Russians always like to mess around. And it's because they have a desire to return to their superpower status. And, as things change with the energy, they could have a shot at that as the northern passages start opening up near the ice caps where shipping becomes more viable through the Arctic. Russia has the most Arctic coastline, and as many people are going to find out, this is another reason why President Trump wants to have Greenland. It's a strategic gamble because look, whether we want to talk about we won't go into the minutia of global warming because that's obviously been used by a political tool. But the fact of the matter is that there is glacier melt in the Arctic, and that is opening up sea passages that have not existed for centuries, and certainly not sea passages that we've been able to take advantage of in the modern era. So if we can ship over the top, that's going to start empowering different countries. It's going to allow the transport of oil to China from different routes because right now we kind of have them by the balls with the Strait of Malacca and that being a huge choke point for them in Southeast Asia. And any way that Russia and China can kind of circumvent American hegemony when it comes to energy, they're going to do. And as a sovereign country, I don't blame them for trying to do that. It is what it is. We obviously do the same thing, and we've done that. And I mean, look at how we've manipulated the world over the last almost century, and how that's all being revealed with USAID, the intelligence agencies, and what the State Department has done. So this is the game of thrones and nations, so to speak. So there's a lot more here to play, but I would argue that Russia being a more European nation, let's be honest, even though they straddle, continental Europe and Asia, they are a more, European nation. Orthodox Christianity is their primary religion as well. Uh, I would say that we have much more culturally in common with Russia, and so does Europe, than we do with China. So putting a wedge between Russia and China is something that I'd like to see. Now, of course, they're going to try to put a wedge between us and Europe, but the Europeans are doing a job of that as well by pushing for authoritarianism and by, completely destroying their societies with with mass migration. So we need to start looking at the bigger picture when it comes to these things. So Greenland is genius. That also allows us to position missile defense systems in a more direct path to China's nuclear missile silos, which would reach the East Coast. Right, right now, our defenses to stop a Chinese ballistic missile attack over the top, which is where China would launch, and over the top, I mean above the North Pole. Uh, it's limited because we can only build interceptors on the East Coast, and that would mean that we would only be able to intercept a lot of those missiles at pretty much the final stage of reentry, which doesn't give us much of a margin for error. If we had Greenland there, not only would we have access to their vast natural resources, but it would allow us to project into the Arctic and give us even more Arctic coastline than we have now with Alaska, and allow us to counter Russia in the ice caps and defend against any sort of ballistic missile or long range hypersonic missile attack from that attack vector. So this is probably some things that maybe some of you have heard and some of you haven't. I think a lot of people think the Greenland is purely for the rare earth metals, which obviously that may be true, and that is a huge factor when it comes to owning Greenland, but it's also a massive strategic boon to the United States to control that territory or at least expand massively. Again, I'm not for the imperialistic stuff, but we do at the end of the day still have to look out for ourselves and protect our own country and our best interests. And look, we've got the cat going crazy in the background, so there's a lot to it, and I think those are some of the different things that we're seeing there. Child cat, what's going on, child cat? What's going on? She's going crazy. She's staring at herself in the mirror and she wants to go inside the closet. Look at those eyes glowing over there. She looks crazy on camera. So keep an eye out for that. Let's go a little bit more talking about what's been going on in Ukraine and review that entire situation and how the media is trying to change a lot of the history of what was going on in that war. Let me deal with this cat here for a second, and we'll check out another article from the Federalist, one of my favorite news sources. All right, cat, I'm gonna open this closet for you. Go ahead, you can go. Come in. She likes to sleep in there sometimes. All right, let's turn this off because the AC's been on long enough. All right. So let's review the war in Ukraine. Again, I talked about it at length last week and a little bit right here. But the media is obviously trying to change the narrative here because they're not happy about the deal that President Trump is trying to broker with Russia. Again, I'm not a fan of Putin or Russia, and I understand that he's trying to play everybody the way that we would try to play him. And there's a lot of moving parts to all of this, but I don't want to see U.S. weapons going to that theater. The Europeans and our NATO allies, supposed allies, I guess at this point, really need to spend a lot more on their own defense. J.D. Vance really articulated it extremely well the other day in another post. I don't remember if I read that one last week, but we did go over his speech. And it's really that, for decades, the left in this country has always looked at the welfare state that Europe has and aimed for that as a model for the United States. But the difference is, and what they always fail to talk about, is that the only reason why Europe has been able to have the welfare state that they've had, which isn't as good as people think it is anyway, um, is because they don't spend any money on their defense. And the United States completely subsidizes that. So it's pretty easy when you don't have to spend money on on your uh, on your militaries, that you can spend it on universal health care and a bunch of other social programs for your population. So much so that you can bring in a bunch of people from other countries and give them benefits that even your own citizens don't have. This has been happening in every European country. I watched from Visegrad 24 a an interview with actually a Yemeni migrant that that immigrated there, who's now basically considers himself a Swede. He's pretty much become agnostic. He's dropped Islam, and I mean he's a gay man, so he can't really be a Muslim. So he actually pursued asylum there legitimately. And as he saw how bad the Swedes themselves were treated compared to migrants to the country, and how basically everybody can just become a Swedish citizen with minimal effort there, he thought to himself, well, geez, if native Swedes are being treated this badly and they've lost their country and their culture, what the heck is going to happen to me? Somebody that I actually embrace this society, but I'm not a native Swede myself. Like this government's not going to protect anybody. And he's had a kind of a complete transformation. He considered himself an Islamic extremist in the past. I'll actually post a link to that video because I think it's actually excellent to watch. And it's very much eye-opening, and it really shows what is going on, what really is going on here. And it's how Sweden lost control
You were
from Visegrad 24. I'll play a short snippet here, just a little intro, and then you guys can check this out because I think this is specific to Sweden, but it's pretty easy to see how this is the case in most of the European Union, with the exception of like the Hungaries, the Romanias, the Baltic states. They have pushed back against a lot of this. Um, and Poland for a long time was pushing back against this. Visegrad may actually be out of Poland, but Poland always is a little bit complicated right now with what's been going on there. There's been a struggle, but uh, Warsaw Patriot can probably enlighten the chat a little bit better than I can about that. So let's bring this up real quick, and then you can just watch this short snippet. I think it's fantastic. Visegrad 24 is actually one of my favorite news sources more recently, and their channel is on point.
you were an Islamist.
Yes.
Aren't you a successful integration story there?
Yes, but I'm an anomaly. I'm an exception.
Louay Ahmed, a Yemeni content creator who was also a former refugee living in Sweden.
Second largest number of bombings of any country not officially at war, only after Mexico.
I felt like I had been removed from the Middle East and Yemen and placed in a hub for ISIS. Every holiday, you have airplanes going from Sweden back to Syria, Iraq. If Sweden starts stopping people from coming back to Sweden and actually questioning them, wait, you went back to Syria, you don't have a well-founded fear of persecution, then you're not a refugee. There is no multicultural in Sweden or Europe. There are parallel societies that are dysfunctional. Why are so many girls like committing suicide? Balkongflickor, which means balcony girls. And it's basically girls who are thrown off balconies because they've tainted the honor of the family. Deeply problematic social experiment that's not going to end well.
In Sweden, that truck in Sweden.
The burning of the Quran has sparked 4 days of violence in a number of cities.
How are you going to be able to teach millions of Muslims that they should accept the Quran?
Last night, he was in his apartment.
I would say the gravest mistake in Sweden's history. I saw how the Swedish government and the Swedish system was failing and betraying their own people, and I could no longer trust it. I thought to myself, if this is how you treat the Swedes who built this empire that we're all running to, how are you going to treat me in the future? But this conversation is not going to be had in Sweden until maybe 2030. And I'm so sick of waiting for the Swedes.
So yeah, that a fantastic video. I think you all should watch it. They have another great one about how Hamas has lied about their casualties in Gaza, and that's another great one. They talk about Iran and other things, and uh, just a lot of great reporting from Visegrad. I think they're really starting to blow up, and I think they're an excellent source, especially with a lot of things that are happening in Europe and internationally. If you want a more I guess non-globalist perspective. I guess conservative. I don't even know what to call it at this point, because anti-authoritarian perspective is what we'll call it. But great video. Encourage all of you to watch it. And it's interesting because I think a lot of people don't know, and they go into this in this video, is that even under the UN, if you apply for refugee status in a country, you can't go back to that country because you're supposed to have a fear of persecution, right? So, and this happens in the United States as well. We have a lot of people that seek asylum status. Now, our laws, we don't go by UN law in the United States, but I'm sure that asylum seeking is similar in the United States, where you have a fear of persecution in your country. You're afraid that you're going to get killed or thrown in prison for X, Y, or Z in your country. So you're seeking asylum in the United States or another Western nation, then you can't go back to that country. You can't, because the whole reason for you seeking asylum was that it was unsafe for you to stay where you're from. So if you just go back on vacation all the time or to visit your family, clearly it's not dangerous. So at that point, you revoke your refugee and asylum seeking status. But Western countries don't do that. That's considered racist. That's considered taboo. I consider that bullshit. That's really what it is. That's absolutely what it is. It's utter crap. And it is something that is absolutely suicidal in the West that we've been doing. And it makes absolutely no sense until you start thinking, why do these societies want this? And it is ultimately, I think that there's a few different factors involved here. Um, I think first and foremost is I think it started out, at least in the U.S., because it's not as much immigration. There isn't as much immigration from the Middle East. We get a lot of it from Central and South America. It was to import cheap labor, right? The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, they wanted a bunch of cheap labor to come into the U.S., pay them under the table, work in agricultural jobs or other jobs within the shadows that Americans don't want, supposedly. That's what they always say. And they just want cheap labor, people that they don't have to pay minimum wage, they don't have to pay them benefits or anything like that. And that's about it. Then I think it started becoming more of the fact that at least in the United States, but it used to be in the West at large, we believe in the individual, and we believe in we have a republic here in the United States, and in Europe most of the countries have democratic forms of government, so the people have a say in at least who is elected to office. And in other cases, we have a little bit more power, like here in the United States, where we can vote for amendments. We can have constitutional conventions. Not that we've ever had something like that since this country's inception, but in theory, we can do that. And they don't like that. They don't want that. So you import people from oppressive third world countries, either the Middle East or, again, the Central and South America, Africa, wherever, where you have either chaos, authoritarianism, uh, or war and famine. And anything that you get in the West, even if you're living in the ghettos and the slums of a Western country, it is much better than being in a war torn or authoritarian government where you are dirt poor and have no opportunities. So you import a lot of these people, you have them replace the Western population of people who are too uppity and would fight back against that or vote them out of office. And now you have a population that will accept that authoritarianism because, regardless, it's better than where they came from. So they're going to be okay with it for the most part. Now, again, the ignorance that's happened in especially Europe is that you've imported a population that doesn't care at all about Western values. And one of the prerogatives of Islamism is to spread Islam throughout the world at any cost and to overthrow the institutions of the West. They don't appreciate uh, the good Western feminism. They obviously don't care about any of the LGBTQ alphabet parade at all. Those people are going to be done. So, and they don't even they're even against our a lot of our culture. I don't think that they would like a lot of the video games that we play or a lot of the entertainment that we have. Um, so, there's an incompatibility there. So in Europe, they went all in and they're falling apart and paying the price because of it. Now, could it be more conspiratorial? Now, I'll give this is not my idea. You know who you are when I say this, and I'm sure you're watching it. But could it be too that as the Western governments become more authoritarian, as I've said, uh, you know, if you have religion, authoritarianism, unless it's a theocratic society, which obviously we don't want, and Islam would love to have a caliphate. We don't want Christian nationalism in the U.S. either, or any sort of weird form of authoritarianism there, which really doesn't lend itself to Christianity. It wouldn't really be Christianity if that was the case, in my opinion. But regardless, religions are inconvenient for a lot of these authoritarian communistic societies. So if you bring in a clash of the two largest world's religions and they kind of annihilate each other, that helps the globalists as well, because now it's like, hey, now we're just going to push our godless societies with no morality, and we get rid of the barbarians from the Middle East, and we also get rid of these moralistic people on the right in one fell swoop, because they'll take each other out, and then now we can control everything. Uh, so that is true, Jane, the elite fan. And look, there is something to be desired, right? It doesn't mean that I don't believe in censorship, but obviously, don't some things aren't great and are a little bit depraved in our society, but it is what it is, right? I don't think there needs to be laws doing that unless somebody's being exploited, obviously, and definitely children don't need access to like sexually explicit content. But hey, every aside from that, it is what it is. Play what you want, watch what you want. Some of it's not good for you, and it'll damage like pornography and things like that. That'll probably damage your relationships and cause other issues. But hey, that's not my problem as far as that. But anything with where you've got human trafficking or anything like that, or any industries that promote that, obviously those are things that we have to eliminate. That's a big factor of why we're going after the cartels as well. It's not just the fentanyl that's being shipped in from China that's killing Americans by the tens of thousands. It's the human trafficking that's involved with that, and the women and children that are being exploited. And a lot of these industries, like the adult entertainment industry, do take advantage of a lot of that. And there are people that are exploiting people. So, aside from it's not good for you and for your relationships to watch a lot of that content, it also could be helping fund a lot of these organizations that are really, kidnapping and enslaving people. But that that kind of goes hand in hand now. Now, sexy women in video games, hey, do what you want. I like I like having relationships with women in the real world. That's what I do. And I'm a one woman kind of man anyway, so I I'm not into it. But hey, whatever floats your boat. I'm not going to judge. At the end of the day, I'm not the one that judges anyway. We all have our meeting with our maker. So it is what it is. Um, but yeah, I did think all that stuff with the video games was pretty funny though. I'm not going to weigh into that what was it, Goonergate or something like that. It just was like kind of a big nothing burger for me, but I think some people grifted some of that. Some people are being honest about it in both ends of it. I agree and disagree with a lot of the points, but I don't think there should be censorship or anything like that when it comes to it. It's just like, hey, it is it is what it is, right? You know, we'll go work out and find a good person to be with, ladies and gentlemen. Don't or if you're alone, there's other things you can do, right? You don't have to resort to that stuff. So. That's a whole can of worms right there. All right. So uh we've talked about even more things there. We talked about Europe and what they're going through. Let's move on to this that I thought was interesting that nobody I agree. Total nonsense. Look, things have been boring, right? When we started winning, we were winning more than ever before. In the entertainment industry, we've seen a lot of the big gaming corporations start kind of falling apart, and DEI is starting to reverse itself. I think we're going to see a lot of changes in the entertainment industry. I think the bigger thing that we're going to start seeing that maybe we didn't realize before is going to be AI generated games. I think we're going to get a lot of shovelware crap coming out soon. Um, and it won't necessarily be woke, but it'll just be garbage. So I think that's going to be the next thing that we start fighting against or just complaining about, or games going up to $100. But I think that a lot of the DEI stuff, it's going to start going by the wayside. What's up, Cosmo? Uh, good to see you in the chat. Um, I think that that's going to be the next crusade, but it hasn't been as interesting. I guess you can talk about the PC gaming space and how Nvidia has completely destroyed the GPU market with their prices, and AMD just hasn't been able to compete for a long time. But games are poorly optimized. I think that's really what we're starting to see now, right? It's the DEI stuff. We're still going to deal with it for a couple more years because development cycles for certain games take so long, and there's so much money invested in some of these games that sunk cost fallacy is a huge part of this industry, where games that started being developed 3 or 4 years ago went down the DEI path, and at this point, what they're $100 or $200 in, and they're going to come out. So we're going to start seeing a lot of these. We're going to still see the tail end of the woke bullcrap in a lot of video games, and then we're going to see the correction, but it's going to be a slow correction. So I think we'll still have that, but after a while, we already know. Like we kind of have won, and we're winning this fight, so we're beating a dead horse. So everybody's got to look for something new to talk about, right? It's part of the reason why I wasn't talking about politics for a while, because it was the same thing over and over, wasn't it? We know what the left was doing, we know what's being revealed. Now it's great because we are kind of on the other side, but President Trump is doing so much with his administration. So many people are waking up throughout the world that we still have battles to be fought, even though we've kind of won. But we've really won the first round. Now we're going to the real war. We're in the final stage, so to speak. But even after that, there's going to be bonus rounds after Trump is done being president, because these people are never going to stop. And there will try to be a pendulum swing, especially if inflation doesn't move in the right direction. Because ultimately, you can you can reveal the corruption within the government until the cows come home. But most normies and people that are living paycheck to paycheck are going to be like, well, yeah, that sucks. But if you're not going to give me this money or tell me how this is going to be cheaper for me and reduce the price of goods and housing and cars and all that stuff, I don't really care. The other side is telling me they're going to give me free shit. So I'm going to vote for them again. And this is the constant struggle that we have to deal with here. So, and many people that are principled and want to see that corruption rooted out and destroyed are going to stay on the bandwagon. But a lot of other people are going to jump ship because they're not actually committed to the cause. It was just politically expedient for them. So that's one of the things that we need to be wary of as time continues. And we want to make sure that Trump and his administration keep their eyes on the ball when it comes to that. So I do, man, I didn't think, I thought I was going to have trouble making it to 2 hours today. But once again, I somehow find how to do an insanely, my rants have gotten almost longer over the years, haven't they? Like I remember back in the day, I went like 20, 30 minutes sometimes, and used to have a co-host, so it was like, okay, now I got to take a break here. But now it's like the rants just don't stop, and I have like 8 or 9 bullet points that I want to get to, and I just keep going. Now, a lot of it's pretty organic because whether you know it or not, I've covered a lot of these things throughout this conversation. So there's always a narrative that's going across that permeates through all of this. But I don't. I do my preparations obviously to make sure that my information is accurate, but I don't practice anything. I just kind of go for it, and I don't know where the rants are going to take me once I start them. I kind of know what I want to talk about, but then it just goes, and I just let the magic happen. Then somehow in the end, it all comes together, and I find my way back home. It's part of having ADD, I guess. It becomes a whirlwind. Thank you, Armsman. That's just how I do it. It's just kind of like it's kind of a free flow here. I just freestyle it most of the time. I did see this. This does have me concerned again. While all of this is going on throughout the world, um, while we've got, you know, the authoritarianism in Europe and the permeation of Islamic extremism, while we're dealing with Russia and Ukraine and the corruption therein and trying to end that conflict, of course, our good friends and our future superpower adversaries, the Chinese, are up to some stuff on the side. And see, this is poking things right here. This is what the Chinese are doing. They're probing and trying to see if our eyes are still on the ball. And this is a test, and this is something that we're going to have to continue to deal with. And is China a paper tiger or not? They're starting to project their power. So here, this is from the war zone. China's sudden live fire naval drills off of Australia rattle Canberra. For those of you that don't know, Canberra is the capital of Australia, not Sydney. So China sent a couple of their guided missile destroyers. Actually, this is they call this a destroyer, but it's almost like what we would call a cruiser. Not that ship designations mean anything anymore because we don't have big guns and armor on ships anymore. It's really about how many missiles you can carry and tonnage. But even that is kind of blurred. So frigates, destroyers, cruisers, what are they? What do those terms mean? In the past, it was based on your specialty. Now it's just, hey, the more missiles you got, once you pass a certain number, it might be a cruiser instead of a destroyer. Or you could be like the U.S. Navy, which is now everything is a destroyer because we got a bunch of Arleigh Burkes and aircraft carriers. And that's pretty much what we've got. We got like four or five cruisers left. Um, but our destroyers are more capable than those cruisers. So I don't know what it means. Anyway, that's an aside there. So a rare Chinese naval drill with a previously unannounced live fire. See, this is poking around right here. This is them trying to figure out what they can get away with. Has disrupted air traffic over and around the Tasman Sea between Australia and New Zealand. Authorities in Australia say they only learned that the Chinese ships would be firing some of their weapons after the crews of commercial airliners flying overhead received alerts. In addition to the signals this particular incident sends, the general presence of the flotilla in the region underscores the increasing reach of a steadily larger and more capable People's Liberation Army Navy. I always think that's funny how they call themselves the PLA Navy. So it's an Army Navy beyond China's own shores. The PLAN's Type 55 destroyer Zun Yi and Type 54A frigate Hengyang and Type 903 replenishment ship Wei Shanhu have been sailing south in international waters to the east of Australia since at least last week. Often referred to as a cruiser given its size, the Type 55 is one of the most modern and capable warships in Chinese service today. Elements of the Australia and New Zealand armed forces, including warships and P-8 Poseidon aircraft, maritime patrol planes, have been shadowing their movements. So this is the frigate right here. So the Australians weren't notified by China, and this was 340 miles off the coast of Sydney. A lot of airline flights needed to get diverted while they're in midair, and this is pretty much this was the location right here. This is the Chinese flexing their muscles and kind of saying, I mean, this is pretty ridiculous that between two major Western countries, the Chinese are having live fire exercises. Now, obviously, most countries start their territorial waters only about 12 miles off of their coasts. So, yes, the Chinese are in an area where they can do this stuff, but this is pretty much unacceptable as far as I'm concerned. But they're poking the bear, right? While we're distracted throughout the world, or maybe not so much, they're trying to project their power and show that they now have a blue water navy that is capable of going wherever they want, at least in the Pacific theater of operations, and be able to exert their muscle. And countries like Sydney and Australia really would not be able to do much if the Chinese sent a really viable surface action group. So this underscores the importance too of these countries upping their defense spending and showing why we're making a pivot from Europe and why we don't necessarily want to deal with Russia. Look, Russia is nothing compared to China right now. And I think the Russians, if anything, the war in Russia, even though we've degraded a lot of their capabilities, they've been able to rebuild their military industrial base, at least to a level that the West can't match in Europe. And now the United States is a little bit of a different story, but so we kind of want to finish that mess, and we want to start. I think that the ultimate long-term goal needs to be trying to put a wedge between Russia and China and incentivize Russia to become a Western country. I think that now that may be easier said than done. Of course, the Russians always are going to Russian. They're going to do what they want to do. They want to become like the United States, another superpower again. So they're going to be resistant. They don't want to play second fiddle. But the fact is, like I said earlier in the show, we have a lot more in common with them. The Chinese are a totally different story. So if we can disrupt their alliance and then focus completely on dealing with China and deterring them, because ultimately we don't want a war over Taiwan or any of these other countries if we don't need to. Uh, we're going to potentially have some serious problems. And China is going to reach a point of desperation soon, right? Uh, as more of the truth of COVID-19 gets revealed and exactly what the purpose of it was it to cripple the US economy? Was it an act of war? I think that the fentanyl crisis is an act of war. We are going to have some sort of confrontation with China, whether we like it or not. Now, Taiwan may be the ultimate excuse because we don't want them to gain that chip manufacturing, but I think the motivations for us to have an adversarial relationship with China are already there. They're killing 100,000 Americans a year through fentanyl. And that's a serious transgression. And it's because they're getting revenge for the opium wars that happened in the 1800s. They don't forget about things like we do in the West, where every 4 years it's like a reset here and we have amnesia. And most people are like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that inflation was going on or that all these things happened under Obama. Excuse me. And but the Chinese don't think that way. Most other countries think a lot more long term. We're about me now, right away, instant gratification. No, the Chinese are trying to come up with a grand strategy that goes for the next 100 years. Now, obviously, communism is all about centralized planning, and that typically fails. But they're at least preparing for eventualities that we seem to be completely either ignorant of or willfully ignorant of. And really, it comes down to our politicians and corporations caring more about greed and being exploited by the smokeless war that China's been fighting against us, as they call it, through influence campaigns and economic power that that we that we've got our eyes off the prize. So this is something that we need to look into. This is something that we need to prevent. And ultimately, this is why we've created the AUKUS Alliance, which is Australia, the UK, and the US, and why we want to sell Australia some Virginia-class submarines. But that's going to take years. So these countries really need to step up their game, and they need to start reprioritizing, and they need to decouple from China, which is something that we need to do as well. It's easier said than done because this is decades in the making, and they need to get this this dealt with, because this is going to be, these chickens are going to come home to roost, and we're not going to like the eggs they're laying, ladies and gentlemen. That's all I have to say. And Joe C, is this true? Is this true? This is massive breaking news if this is the case, and I think that would be that's a fantastic addition to this. Let's see. Is this true what you're saying about Dan Bongino? Is he really in? Let's look it up. Let's look it up. Is Dan Bongino the deputy director of the FBI? Wow, he really is. Look at this. 12 minutes ago, straight off the presses. Thank you for pointing that out. We got breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. Great, straight from the man himself, Donald Trump, and from Dan Bongino. Dan Bongino says, "Thank you, Mr. President, Attorney General Bondi, and Director Patel." And President Trump says, "Great news for law enforcement and American justice. Dan Bongino, a man of incredible love and passion for our country, has just been named the next deputy director of the FBI by the man who will be the best ever director, Kash Patel. Dan has a master's degree in psychology from CUNY and an MBA from Penn State. He was a member of the New York Police Department, New York's finest, and a highly respected special agent with the United States Secret Service. I almost wish that he'd become the head of the Secret Service instead, and is now one of the most successful podcasters in the country, something he is willing and prepared to give up in order to serve." That's a huge sacrifice. And see, this is what I said, where you need to give certain people that really want to serve some credit here. There are people in these agencies that are good, patriotic Americans. I think Dan Bongino giving up what is probably the largest podcast on Rumble and in the top 5 podcasts in the country, he's hand over fist making cash every single day to go here to not even be the head of the FBI. That is patriotic right here. I think as a deputy Den Haktua, he does not have to go through a confirmation hearing. I think Kash can just hire him, but we'll find out. I think he can just do that because he's not the head man. But wow, that is huge. That is breaking news, ladies and gentlemen, straight off the presses on X. Dan Bongino is going to be the deputy director of the FBI. The hits keep on coming. The wins keep on flowing. Have you had enough? Have you had enough? Are you not entertained, ladies and gentlemen? Are you not entertained? Let's freaking go. That's awesome news. Dan is a great guy. Congratulations to him, and congratulations to the American people, because we keep getting awesome patriots of integrity in this administration, and that is something great. See, look at that. There you go. I want to bring the show in different ways, but we got breaking news again. Thank you, Joe C, Pure Blood, for bringing that up. That is awesome news. The last thing that I was going to bring up real quick, and I won't elaborate on it too much, because hey, we need more stuff to talk about later on, right? Is obviously the Pope's health has been deteriorating, according to the Vatican. He is in critical condition due to some respiratory problems. I believe he had pneumonia, and it looks like he's having early kidney failure, which is a very bad sign. For the Vatican to be able to reveal some of this stuff isn't great. Now, look, obviously, I don't want the Pope to pass away, but this Pope hasn't been good. He has been. I'm no longer a practicing Catholic, but I am a born again Christian. So I do care about the Catholic Church, in as much that it is the largest Christian denomination in the entire world. There are good things that the Catholic Church has done. There are some horrendous things that the Catholic Church has done. And there is a massive concern that, especially the way that this Pope has taken the papacy, that it's in the wrong direction. And it is and it's a globalist direction. He's been opposing a lot of what President Trump has said, with the irony and the hypocrisy of the fact that Vatican City is not opening its doors to refugees, but you expect the U.S. not to have its borders. And we can go back to Nehemiah in the Bible, and it was all about rebuilding the walls around Jerusalem. So building walls and making sure that, people that aren't going to assimilate into your society is not an anti-Christian uh, methodology. So, and it seems good enough for the Catholic Church and the Vatican, right? So I think that he's just been terrible. And a lot of this has been caused too by the Jesuit sect of the Catholic Church. And, Pope Francis is from South America, and they believe in liberation theology there, which has been closely associated with socialism and communistic movements in Central and South America. And it really shows in what his policies have been. So, oh my God, Joe C, you're where's Carla in the chat when we need her? Oh my goodness. Yes, Malachi Martin. See, I wasn't going to go down that path yet because I need to do a lot more about this, and it's something that we can talk about. But yes, the prophecy of the prophecy of the popes, the Black Pope, and yes, the fact that he was Petrus Romanus. There's a lot of prophecy behind that. That this is going to bring about the demise of the Catholic Church, and could lead to one of the signs of the Antichrist coming, and a lot of what the Catholic Church has been trying to hide. Supposedly there have been black masses. There is a bishop. I will play his video, and we'll kind of end it there on a cliffhanger for this episode. But I will come back. We'll talk a little bit more about Malachi Martin on another episode. Some of that we're going to get a little bit theological, which, hey, some people may not like that, but it's a big part of my life and something I would definitely want to talk about. And you guys don't know the mod extraordinaire when it comes to church history and conspiracies. She's a beast. She's an absolute beast. If I personally, I'm calling her out right now. Maybe she's seeing this. I think that she should do a rant when it comes to that stuff, but she's very private. So so, but she feeds great information, and there's a lot of stuff that I've definitely learned about church history and Christianity, and a lot of these underlying not so conspiracy theories at this point, and prophecy. And when it comes to UAPs and things like that as well, I've done a lot more research, and there's a whole can of worms there when it comes to that, and theology. But again, that's another story. What you can watch L.A. Marzulli and a bunch of other people if you want to know more about that. But there's some wild stuff out there that will blow your minds, and that will really open your horizons to things that will make a lot more sense, that you may have thought were crazy, but they're actually not. So let's bring up this bishop, and we will finish the show right there. I got this bookmarked over here. I thought I did. Anyway. Yeah, there's a lot of wild stuff out there. Okay. Oh man, I had this queued up. Okay. This is Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano. He was actually excommunicated by the church, and he's kind of in the same vein of Malachi Martin, which was, a member of the Catholic Church that was trying to reveal a lot of the darkness that's going on within the Catholic Church, and the corruption, and how they've basically been aligning themselves with globalists and different sects, and literally some of the forces of darkness, we could argue. So I don't want to offend any of my Catholic friends out there. Like I said, I was raised Catholic, and I want the Catholic Church to do good and go on the right path if it's possible. But you know, like any large organization that starts becoming political and losing their way, the Catholic Church is victim to that as well. And what better vector for the forces of evil than to go after, the largest church in all of Christianity? So I mean that's some scary stuff. So let's bring this up right here. Let's maximize this. So read the subtitles more than anything else. Let's move this up too so you can check that out. We'll end the show there.
The fourth revolution terrorized by Klaus Schwab and the family of international finance find in Bergoglio not a neutral spectator, which would itself already be an unheard of thing, but actually a zealous cooperator who abuses his own moral authority in order to support a destra outside the church the project of the dissolution of traditional society, while ad intra within the church he pursues the project of the demolition of the church in order to replace her with a philanthropic organization
Pope Francis here.
of Masonic inspiration. And it is scandalous. This applies to both, to civil and ecclesiastical world, confirming the pactum sceleri, the criminal conspiracy between the deep state and the deep church. It seems to me that in this conspiracy the role of the Jesuit has been decisive. It is no coincidence that for the first time in history a religious of the Society of Jesus is seated on the throne of Peter.
There you go. You can find out more about Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano. I encourage you to check him out and what he's revealed about some of the corruption of especially this Pope. And, he was excommunicated a couple of years ago for trying to rise against that and talking about the globalist ties of this Pope and where the Catholic Church has been going. And it's pretty obvious that we've seen that over the last few years. So that's what I got. I'll dive deeper into the Malachi Martin stuff, and I can talk about that. And there you go, JM the Elite fan dropping some cool factoids there. So, Masonic orders are derived from Hermetism beliefs, who exalted an entity that was amalgamated from the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth. There you go. That's cool stuff. So yeah, I'll get into some of this stuff more in depth on the next episode, and we can start going down some of the conspiratorial paths of things. Maybe not as a pure political show, but something a little bit more fun, and talk about some of those things. I'm sure some people think it's a little bit crazy. It's not something that I've tried to talk about in the show before, but there are things that I believed in that I've become more educated on, especially in the last year and a half or so. But there's a lot of interesting stuff when it comes to the powers that be, both in the political realm, the realm of conspiracy theories, UAPs, religious intrigue, and the kind of the spiritual warfare realm. So it's cool stuff. So thank you all for joining me on episode 26 of Rolo's Rants. I'll let you know if we're going to have a midweek episode. We did do pretty good with Super Chats. We didn't hit that goal. So we'll have to see. But there's so much news going on that there's usually a lot to talk about. And again, we're going to talk about some of this cool, fun stuff right here. We'll be back for more Fortnite. As always, go ahead and check out the previous streams from Friday. And we are going to... I'll drop clips of this episode as the week goes on. If you want to share snippets with people out there, let them know to like the episode. If you're here, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're back making consistent content here, and hopefully you guys will be happy about that. Support the show if you want to do it through super chats, memberships. Everything is appreciated. We're supporting the cats here now. It's becoming a big cat family. We got the Princess Floof down there in her paws, and then we got the babies in the farm, and we got a lot of things going on here. So I will catch you all on the next one. Good night. God bless you all. God bless America, and have a great start to your week.